There's an idea that few people dare to question, an idea so widely accepted it seems like an absolute truth. The idea that the goal of life is comfort. Fewer problems, less pressure, less effort, more rest, more entertainment, more security, more stability. And at first glance, it seems logical. After all, who wants to suffer? Who wants to complicate their life unnecessarily? But there's a question almost no one asks. What if comfort comes at a price? Not the price you pay with money, but the price you pay with your potential, your opportunities, your growth, your future. Because the reality is that comfort is never free. Every time you choose comfort, you're trading something. Sometimes time, sometimes discipline, sometimes opportunities, and often the life you could have had. The dangerous thing is that the bill doesn't arrive today. It arrives years later. When you look back and wonder why you're still in the same place, why your income hasn't grown, why your dreams have remained just ideas, why others have moved forward while you've stayed exactly where you were, that's when you discover an uncomfortable truth. Comfort has compound interest, and that interest can cost you a fortune. Today we're going to do something different. We're going to break down the true cost of comfort, not from a superficial motivational perspective, but from the perspective of psychology, wealth, and personal development. Because one of the reasons most people never achieve financial freedom isn't a lack of intelligence. It's their addiction to comfort, and once you understand this, you'll never look at your daily decisions the same way again. Number 1. Comfort steals your future. Imagine for a moment that there is a machine capable of transforming a small daily action into gigantic results in 10 years. That machine exists. It's called compound interest, and it doesn't just work with money. It also works with habits, learning, skills, discipline, productivity, and confidence. Everything you do today multiplies in the future. But here's the problem. Comfort also multiplies. Sleeping an extra hour doesn't seem important. Postponing a task doesn't either. Skipping a workout seems insignificant. Watching videos for 3 hours seems harmless. But when you add up these behaviors over years, the result is devastating. Comfort doesn't destroy your life in a day. It destroys it slowly, silently, almost invisibly. Like a drop of water falling on a rock, it doesn't seem to do any damage until one day the rock is completely pierced. Successful people understand something that most ignore. The future is built today, and every seemingly small decision is voting for the person you will become. The real question is, are your decisions building wealth or comfort? Because you usually can't build both at the same time. Number 2. Comfort destroys your ability to grow. There's a biological reason we seek comfort. Our brains were designed to conserve energy. For thousands of years, survival was difficult, so the brain learned to avoid risks, uncertainty, and unnecessary effort. The problem is that we live in a completely different world. Today, the greatest rewards lie on the other side of discomfort. Learning a new skill is uncomfortable. Starting a business is uncomfortable. Public speaking is uncomfortable. Investing is uncomfortable. Negotiating is uncomfortable. Leading is uncomfortable. And growing is uncomfortable. But here's the paradox. Temporary discomfort leads to permanent freedom, while temporary comfort leads to permanent limitations. Most people live trapped within such a small comfort zone that they end up confusing security with life, and they are not the same thing. Because a completely secure life is usually a completely predictable life, and a completely predictable life rarely generates extraordinary wealth. All growth happens when you do something you haven't yet mastered, when you face uncertainty, when you accept the possibility of failure. Comfort protects you from pain, but it also protects you from success. Number 3. Comfort makes you dependent. One of the less visible costs of comfort is dependency. When you get used to everything being easy, you begin to lose resilience. You start needing perfect conditions to act. You need motivation to work, energy to begin, inspiration to create, confidence to move forward, and you end up becoming a slave to your emotions. Financially successful people develop a different skill. They learn to act even when they don't feel like it, to execute when they are tired, to move forward when they feel afraid, because they understand that discipline is more reliable than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline remains, and comfort is the natural enemy of discipline. Every time you choose the easy way, you strengthen the muscles of dependency. Every time you choose the difficult way, you strengthen the muscles of freedom. Number 4. Comfort reduces your income. Now let's talk about money. Because many people want wealth, but few want to do what wealth demands. The reality is simple. The market rewards value, and value is usually found where there is difficulty. The highest-paying jobs tend to solve more complex problems. The most successful companies tend to face greater risks. The most profitable skills tend to require more time to develop. That's why comfort has a huge financial cost. When you avoid learning, you avoid selling, leading, starting businesses, and improving. You're avoiding the exact activities that could increase your income, and meanwhile, other people are doing the uncomfortable work you're avoiding. That's why they advance, why they grow, why they create opportunities. Not because they're smarter, but because they tolerate discomfort better. Number 5. Comfort steals your identity. This is perhaps the most profound cost. Because it's not about money, it's about who you become. Every decision you make is shaping your identity. When you consistently choose comfort, you begin to see yourself as someone who avoids challenges, as someone who procrastinates, as someone who always waits for the perfect moment, and little by little you build a limited identity. But when you choose voluntary discomfort, something different happens. You begin to prove to yourself that you are capable, that you can learn, that you can adapt, that you can endure, that you can grow, and that evidence changes your self-perception. Authentic confidence doesn't come from positive thinking. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. Self-esteem doesn't come from repeating affirmations. It comes from doing difficult things. True self-confidence is built when you become someone who knows how to face discomfort. Number 6. Comfort makes you miss out on opportunities. Most opportunities don't come wrapped in security. They arrive disguised as uncertainty, risk, fear, and possibilities without guarantees, and that's precisely why most people let them pass them by. Think about all the decisions that can change a life. Moving to a new city, starting a business, investing in yourself, accepting a new professional challenge, talking to someone you admire, presenting an idea, creating content. All these actions have something in common. They're uncomfortable, and that's why so few people take them. Comfort makes you believe it's better to wait. Wait until you have more money, more experience, more confidence, more time. But the truth is that many opportunities have an expiration date, and when you finally feel ready, the opportunity has already vanished. Wealth tends to favor those who act before they feel prepared, not those who wait for perfect conditions. Number 7. Comfort weakens your mind. The mind works much like muscles. If you don't challenge it, it weakens. If you don't train it, it loses capacity. If you don't push it, it stops growing. The problem is that comfort eliminates many of those challenges. Everything becomes automatic, routine, and predictable, and little by little, the mind stops expanding. People who build wealth tend to maintain a constant relationship with learning. They read when others are entertained, study when others rest, and analyze when others react, because they understand that their most important asset isn't their bank account, but their ability to think better, and that ability only grows when the mind faces constant challenges. Number 8. Comfort creates invisible stagnation. One of the greatest dangers of comfort is that it doesn't seem dangerous. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't raise alarms. It doesn't produce an immediate crisis. It simply keeps you exactly where you are, and that's the problem. Many people believe that as long as they don't move backward, they're moving forward. But in a constantly changing world, standing still is equivalent to falling behind. Industries evolve, technologies advance, skills transform, markets change, and while everything else moves forward, the comfortable person remains the same. Years later, they discover that it wasn't one big decision that halted their growth. It was thousands of small, accumulated moments of comfort. Number 9. Comfort reduces your tolerance for failure. Failure is inevitable. No matter how talented you are, no matter how much you study, no matter how much you plan. At some point, you will fail. The difference lies in how you react. People accustomed to discomfort understand that failure is part of the process. They learn, adapt, and persevere. But those who constantly live in comfort tend to interpret every failure as a sign to stop. Since they never developed emotional resilience, any obstacle seems insurmountable, and so they abandon projects, goals, dreams, businesses, and objectives. Not because they were impossible, but because they never learned to cope with frustration, and without tolerance for failure, it is nearly impossible to build significant wealth. Number 10. Comfort steals the life you could have had. There's a powerful question, one few people dare to confront, a question that usually hits hardest in the absolute silence of the night when you can no longer lie to yourself. What version of me never came to be? What if I had been just a little bit braver, more disciplined, more consistent, more determined? What if I had actually seized those opportunities instead of letting them slip through my fingers out of sheer hesitation? What if I had mastered those complex high-ticket skills, if I had taken those calculated risks, and if I had pushed through the friction when everything in my mind was begging me to quit and take the easy way out? The greatest tragedy in the human experience isn't failure. It is never discovering what you were truly capable of achieving. Because at the very end of life, people rarely regret trying too hard, making a mistake, or looking foolish while pursuing a dream. They usually regret trying too little. They regret playing it too safe, living a quiet life of absolute mediocrity, and staying trapped in a loop of comfortable routines. And that is, without a doubt, the highest financial and spiritual cost of all. It is not about losing money on a bad investment, and it is not about wasting a few months of your time. It is about losing the ultimate opportunity to meet the absolute best version of yourself. We are currently living in the most comfortable, convenient, and effortless era in human history. We have instant food, endless digital entertainment, one-click shopping, home delivery, hyper-optimized social media algorithms, and non-stop streaming. We are drowning in a sea of instant gratification. And while many of these technological tools are incredible conveniences, they also create a highly sophisticated, silent psychological trap. They accustom our brains to receiving high dopamine rewards without an ounce of real effort. They condition us to seek constant, immediate pleasure, and they systematically train us to avoid any kind of resistance, friction, or hard work. But the brutal reality of the real economy is that wealth works in exactly the opposite way. True, lasting wealth demands extreme patience, long-term vision, deeply delayed gratification, rigorous discipline, and temporary sacrifices that most people are simply too weak to endure. That is precisely why so many individuals spend their entire lives wishing for extraordinary financial results, while stubbornly maintaining completely ordinary, low-effort habits. They want the ultimate crown of financial freedom without ever touching the financial discomfort required to build it. They want massive wealth without a shred of calculated risk, and they demand exponential growth without putting in the daily, unglamorous effort. And in the real world, that simply does not exist. The universe does not reward wishes, it only rewards raw value and leverage. If anything has become crystal clear throughout this video, it is that comfort never comes free. It is a loan with an astronomical interest rate. Every comfortable, lazy decision you make today has a massive price tag attached to it, and 99% of the time, that price is heavily paid by your future self, who will have to work twice as hard just to survive. The good news is that you are still breathing, which means you still have time. You can still change your trajectory right now. You can stop drifting on autopilot and start building a fortress of habits that work directly for your bank account, instead of destroying your potential. But to do that, motivation is completely useless. You need a strict system, a battle-tested roadmap, and a clear, unyielding strategy to build long-term wealth intelligently. That is exactly why we created the Wealth Blueprint. This is not a space for people looking for get-rich-quick schemes or magical formulas. This is a highly specialized space designed exclusively for individuals who are utterly tired of living a default life dictated by comfort. It is for those who finally understand that financial freedom never happens by accident, by luck, or by inheritance, and who are truly ready to build a legacy based on continuous growth, brutal discipline, and absolute prosperity. If you are finally ready to stop making excuses, step up, and master the exact wealth principles that the top 1% use to create multi-generational asset portfolios, you will find the exclusive link in the description down below. Most people will spend their entire lives trying to make things easier, complaining about the economy, and looking for shortcuts to minimize their effort. But extraordinary, highly successful people understand a completely different law of nature. They do not pray for an easy life. They focus entirely on becoming stronger, sharper, and more resilient. Because when you consciously choose to become stronger, more disciplined, and more capable, life naturally stops seeming so incredibly difficult. Never forget this fundamental truth. Comfort sells you immediate relief, but it leaves you broke in the future. Discomfort, on the other hand, sells you temporary pain, but it guarantees your future freedom. Every single day that passes, with every micro decision you make, you are actively choosing one or the other. There is no middle ground. So the definitive question you must answer right now is this. When you look back at your life 10 years from now, when you look at your bank account and your freedom, will you be genuinely grateful for the comfortable, easy choices you made today? Or will you look at yourself in the mirror and desperately wish you had found the courage to do what you always knew you had to do? If this video provided real value to you and shook your perspective, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a powerful like, and share it immediately with someone in your life who needs to wake up and hear this urgent message. And always remember, your future is never built when you are wrapped in comfort. Your future is being built in the exact moments when you are consistently doing what everyone else around you is desperately avoiding. I will see you in our next video.